The Holy Gospel according to John as found in the first chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light which enlightens everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him. Yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he was before me.' From his fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. It's been kind of a hectic week for me, so I decided I'm going to tell you a story. I have an online colleague, her name is Anne, and she's quite a good storyteller. And a few years back, she wrote a story about a storyteller. And I want to share that with you this morning. His name was Isaac, and he started telling stories when he was just a small boy. First, he told stories to his family and his friends. Well, they loved them. And soon the whole village realized that Isaac had a very special gift. He could spin stories all night. Stories to lift you up, stories to calm you down, stories to amuse and amaze you. Isaac always had a story. His fame sped throughout the region, and eventually it even reached the palace of the king. So the king sent for Isaac. "Come to the palace. You can be the king's storyteller." Isaac was very excited. The king's storyteller. What could be grander than that? He'd be telling stories to the rich and famous at the king's banquets. And he'd be rich and powerful too, because the king would be his friend. But Isaac was nervous too, because this king, Herod, was not a nice man. In fact, he was a ruthless and cruel king. Keep him on your side and you would be set for life. Make an enemy of him, and it could be the end of you. Despite this, Isaac couldn't resist the lure of fame and fortune, so off he went to Jerusalem and to Herod's palace. At first, he was terrified, but soon he realized that as long as you told Herod the kinds of stories he wanted to hear, he was happy. And Herod liked stories about kings like himself, ruthless, rich kings who got their own way. So Herod was happy, and Isaac was happy, and Isaac rose high in the court and was rewarded with fine clothes and gold and a grand room at the palace. Then, one day, something dreadful happened. You see, every morning when Isaac woke up, the first thing he did was to decide on a story to tell at that night's banquet. But this particular morning, no matter how hard he tried, he could not think of a story that he hadn't already told. He tried to make up a new story, but nothing came into his head. If he couldn't think of a story by that night, he would be in a lot of trouble. Well, the day wore on, but still no story came to Isaac. The sun went down, and Herod's court began to gather in the great hall of the palace, ready for the night's feasting to begin, and everyone settled down to eat and drink, but Isaac couldn't eat a mouthful. He had no idea what he would say when Herod called on him to tell his story. Finally, the moment came. Herod clapped his hands together. "Isaac, king storyteller, tell me a story fit for a king." Isaac stepped out into the middle of the room, his legs trembling in terror. Desperately hoping something would come to him, he opened his mouth, and just at that moment, the door was flung open and a servant rushed in a great flurry of robes. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, I couldn't stop them." "Stop who?" said Herod. "Visitors from the east, Your Majesty, stargazers of some sort, but very finely dressed. They say they're searching for a new king. They've seen a star that announces his birth, and they thought you might know where he was." Herod was furious. "A new king? I'm the only king around here. How dare they? Send them away." "No. Wait. Don't send them away. Bring them in here." He looked around the room. "Not a word from any of you," he said with a wily smile on his face. "Watch and learn." In came the visitors. Herod smiled his sweetest smile at them and beckoned them forward to tell their story. And what a story! They explained about the prophecies they'd read in their home far to the east and the star they'd seen in the sky, a sign of the birth of a child God would send to bring justice and peace to the world. "But what we don't know, Your Majesty, is where this child is to be born." Herod smiled at them. "If there's anything we can do to help you, we'll be happy to do so," he said. He summoned his advisors, people who knew the ancient scriptures. They said, "Well, there are ancient prophecies that talk about Bethlehem, King David's birthplace. You could try there." "There you are," said Herod. "But be sure when you find him to come back and tell me. I want to go and welcome this new king too. Now stay, it's too late for travel." But the stargazers said no. They needed to travel at night so they could see the star that guided them. So off they went. "Well, no time for a story tonight, Isaac," said Herod, "and I don't think even you could do better than all that nonsense we've heard anyway." Isaac was off the hook. But as he walked back to his room, he had an idea. He'd still need a story for tomorrow, or he'd be in the same trouble. Those stargazers. Surely there would be a story in that somewhere. It would be a ridiculous story, but it might make the king laugh. So Isaac slipped out of the palace and set out on the road towards Bethlehem. It wasn't long before he had the stargazers in his sights. They were moving slowly, stopping now and then to look at the night sky. "Funny," thought Isaac, "there is something up there, a star that seems brighter than the rest that I hadn't noticed before." It wasn't far to Bethlehem, and the travelers soon arrived. Isaac followed as they wound their way through the narrow streets. They went past all the big houses. But surely this king would be in one of those. But no. They went on until they came to a rundown house on the edge of town. There was no one about, just the light of that strange star shining above them. It seemed to be directly over the house. The stargazers picked their way across the yard and called out softly. From inside, where the animals stayed at night, they heard someone call out a welcome. Isaac crept after them and peered through a crack in the door. What an extraordinary sight! Right there, amidst the muck and straw, these finely dressed strangers were kneeling before an ordinary-looking man and a woman with a small child in her arms. As Isaac watched, they brought out gifts: gold, sweet-smelling frankincense, precious myrrh. What could make rich, powerful men like these kneel down in the dirt before a child? There was something extraordinary going on here. Isaac strained to hear what they were saying as they talked quietly with the child's parents. Something about God's love for all people. Something about justice and welcome. Isaac thought of the grand court where he made his home, and the power games and the fear of Herod, and suddenly he felt sick of it all. He leaned forward again to try and hear better, but the door he was leaning on gave way, flew open with a great crash, and Isaac went sailing through it and fell on his face in front of the mother and the baby. Well, all heck broke loose. The pigeons flapped around in panic, the animals bellowed in fright, and of course, the baby woke up and began to cry. But the baby's mother just smiled at Isaac as he lay on the filthy floor. "You could have just come in, you know," she said. "You're welcome here." For the second time that night, Isaac couldn't think of a single sensible thing to say. So he just said the first thing that came to his head. "But I don't have a gift to give you," he said. Then he thought again. No, perhaps that's not true. Perhaps I do have something for you. You see, I'm a storyteller, and I have a story to tell you that you need to hear. And he told them about Herod, about his cruelty, and about the way he was trying to trick the stargazers into telling him where the child was, and about what he would do if he found him. They all listened with horror, realizing what great danger the baby was in. Thank goodness Isaac had been there to warn them. It was indeed a precious gift he had given them. So at first light, they all began to pack. The little family said they would head to Egypt, far from Herod. The stargazers decided to take a different route home. There was no way they'd be going back through Jerusalem. And Isaac? Well, he certainly had found a story to tell, but he wasn't going to go anywhere near Herod with it. The more he thought about Herod's court, the less he wanted to be part of it. So Isaac went from village to village and town to town, and everywhere he went, he told this new story of the child born in poverty to come to show God's love for all of us. Did he miss being the king's storyteller? No, because he was still the storyteller for a king, but this time he was telling stories for the King of Heaven. And they say that he still wanders the world telling that story to anyone who will listen. Or perhaps it's just the story that has traveled. After all, someone brought it to me, and I brought it to you, and it's yours to give away to someone else. As those old storytellers like Isaac used to say, that's my tale and now it's told, so I leave it in your hands. Amen.